So, fellow Toastmasters, I'm speaking today on the precipice of the completion of a long journey, my second Toastmasters pathway. I started my overall Toastmaster journey in 2018. Man, 2018 was an epic ago, wasn't it? It took me 3 years to do my first pathway, which was dynamic leadership. I completed it in 2021 when we were still all making sourdough bread. I finished it. I took a short time to reflect and jumped right back in, trying to do something a little different for me in choosing engaging humor. Finishing my second pathway has now also taken a little bit longer than 3 years. At least I'm consistent here. Between the two pathways, speech contest, and some extra speeches that I've thrown in, I've done 50 speeches between two clubs over the last 6 years. That averages to a speech every 6 weeks. Looking back, that feels like a lot. I've spoken on a lot of subjects during this process, trying to find humor in a variety of topics. I used the icebreaker, which I started writing on March 23rd of 2021, to explore being uncomfortable. It was titled, "Being Funny Makes Me Uncomfortable." The essence of this speech was that I like to do things with a sense of adventure that I'm not necessarily confident that I can actually do. And my confidence in writing things that would make you all laugh, chuckle, or even guffaw, it was very low. And yet I was going to go for it and take on this adventure. I tried in a speech to explain how to pick out a bicycle. If you remember that speech, the whole joke was that I have all of the bicycles and therefore I'm a terrible person to give you advice because I'm just going to tell you to buy them all. By the way, as some of you know, I moved in January to a new house with much more limited storage. I actually had to sell 3 of those bikes, and 2 of them are actually stored at a friend's house. I only have 4 here in the house. I've taken a minute to get used to it. I've used a Toastmaster project as therapy to figure out how I felt about becoming an empty nester. By the way, my daughter just left for her second year at Santa Barbara, literally about an hour and a half ago. But I basically embraced that, so much so that when my daughter has come home for the summer, my immediate reaction, of course, was love and happiness was home. But it was quickly followed by annoyance that someone else was now living in my space that I had been mine alone. I explored the psychological reasons why humor is funny. I introduced the concept of benign violation theory, was postulated that humor works via violating norms that aren't important to you. You might recall the 3 main components. A, the presence of an alternative norm suggesting that the situation is acceptable. B, a weak commitment to that violated norm. And then C, psychological distance from the violation. Everybody remembers that and applies this concept every day, right? Right? All right. I did a 20-minute keynote theorizing that dating and looking for a job are the same process. And then I cut that down to a regular speech length and took it a couple levels deep in Toastmasters speech contest. That was a fun journey. And the speech evolved significantly. If you saw or remembered the first one, I had structured it so you didn't really know or had to guess what I was talking about until about 5 or 6 minutes in. But when I ran it for the contest, I made the premise the very first sentence, and I find it just worked so much better. There are more speeches I can review, but I really want to distill 4 things that I took away from this venture. 4 things that I was reminded of or maybe learned new, and I'm going to continue to do my best to apply them as I go through my next path. First, 1, a pathway is a long journey. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, blah, 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 blah. But it's true. If you commit to a speech a month, which is not a lot, it's still going to take you 1.5 years to complete a pathway. So consistent steps are the key. I like to commit to a date on a calendar, and I find that to be good motivation. I don't want to let anybody in our club down, especially Oksana Marie Noel, by bailing on a scheduled speech. Now, I will admit that a couple of my speeches might have been written at the last minute, but I can honestly say I don't think I've ever missed a scheduled speech. Panic is a good motivator. I find that consistent progress at whatever pace is the way to get it done. Put that next speech on your calendar, no matter how far out, and then get it done. Second thing I learned was in humor, timing is everything. There's an art of timing when trying to tell a joke or trying to be funny. But what I'm really talking about is waiting for the laughs, if you get them, to subside. When rehearsing your speech, you have to be prepared to pause, but not always where you think you will. This can be a bit harder on Zoom, or sometimes responses are delayed, but the key to delivering a good joke is to let the people laugh. And sometimes the joke is not where you intend it to be. You can't control how and when people find something funny or how long they laugh. You have to be prepared to let the reaction play out, or heaven forbid, not pause at a point where you thought everyone was going to be giving you a standing ovation for your clever insights. When you're trying to be humorous, you have to be more flexible in your time. Third, finding humor across different personal experiences is hard. Now, when you're telling a simple joke like Philip gave us today, I think everybody laughed. There's formulas and specific reasons why that joke is funny. But if you try to tell a story with some humor where there's no or very limited shared experiences, it's much more difficult because you need that shared experience to be funny. We have a very diverse group here with different cultures, life experiences, languages. I think it's almost impossible to make everyone in this group laugh at the same time. When I started writing, dating, and looking for a job are the same thing, all of my friends who were single and or looking for work laughed as soon as I even said the premise. When I delivered this keynote to you guys, apparently a bunch of people happily in long-term relationships and jobs, I don't know, the shared experience just didn't seem to be there, and I felt the humor felt a little flat. But apparently, to my delight, the people that mostly attend and run Toastmasters speech contests seem to be harder to get along with and or employ, because they sort of more laughed at everything, and in the places that I thought they should. Finally, fourth, live feedback is way more important when you're trying to get attention through humor. You know, if you guys are on mute, I have to rely on kind of scanning the screen and looking at your facial cues, and it can be difficult to focus on a Zoom screen. In our club speeches, everyone's generally muted, sometimes not, but everyone is on video. And with, you know, what, there's 10 people here today, it's pretty easy to focus, and I can look down and see those facial reactions. However, when you do a speech contest, no one's on video except the speaker and maybe the contest chair. For the regional contest, it was partially in person, so the entire room was full of people and on an open mic. So I could hear people laughing, and I had a good response. I knew if things were working. In the divisional contest, only the contest chair, who was virtual, had a hot mic and video. I was performing that speech for an audience of one. Thankfully, she was laughing. But have you ever performed and only one person is reacting to your speech? It takes a minute to get used to. But I definitely assumed that everyone was laughing along with her. So figuring out that feedback loop is an important thing to learn. I'm really going to be curious, and I really want to hear some feedback from everybody, especially those of you who have completed or come close to completing Pathways, what you think of the takeaways and how they relate to things that you've learned. You know, as a reminder, pathway completion is a long journey. Be consistent and put your dates on the calendar. Timing and how you wait for reactions is everything. Finding humor across our diverse group of experiences can be challenging. And find where your live feedback is and pay attention. If you cohere those principles as you go through your own pathways journeys, you'll find to be successful. So now that I've come to the end of my pathway journey, I find that I'm more confident with humor in my speeches. What I'm writing, what I'm saying, and how I'm delivering it. I have taken lessons from all 16 of these speeches and applied them, building the next one upon the next. I hope you, my club members and friends, have enjoyed my speeches and the thoughts that I've shared with you. After some time, I'm going to start this process all over again. One last piece of advice for all of you. When it comes to doing a Pathway project, don't be afraid to take chances. Schedule your speech. Take the risk. Tell your joke. Take the lesson. Improve it and do it again. See you for my next icebreaker.